And maybe you could introduce yourself for the folks that aren't familiar with your.
Bonjour, Nigano Wewidan Indigenous Cause of Sisak Dodain Anishinaabe, Ogichida, Three Fire Society, gathered the Sacred Pipe Sundan. My spirit name is Nigano Wewidan. To my people back home in the Great Lakes area, I am the thunder before the storm. And of course, my English or whatever you want to call it, the name that they bestowed on my colonial name, I guess, is Clyde Belcourt. I'm founder and national director of the American Indian Movement. And I came here once again to the San Francisco Bay Area to rethink Thanksgiving and to what it means to Indian people. Before I left Minneapolis, a lot of people were asking me, why are you going down again to San Francisco? And I said, I'm going down to celebrate Thanksgiving, and compare it to what we've done for centuries. Before the religion came here, every single thing that we did, everything, there had to be a ceremony. We had to ask the Creator for guidance. We had to ask the Mother Earth to forgive us for taking what we needed to survive, to feed our children, the medicine to heal our sicknesses, the powerful medicine that flows through the rivers and streams and veins of Mother Earth, called water. And we had to celebrate that. And we had this dance and we had to sing. And when we went out and hunted the deer or fish or harvest a wild rice or tap a maple sugar tree, plant a garden, no matter what we did, there was a ceremony for it.
Oh,
and when the crops came in and the buffalo came in and the fish came in, we had to think, guess what we had to have? We didn't wait for Abraham Lincoln to declare the last Thursday of the month of November Thanksgiving. We had Thanksgiving every single day of the week, every day.
It also seems that a lot of people are unclear. You can put the headphones on if you want to hear my voice a little better. It's a lot of people are unclear as to what the significance of Thanksgiving is originally, in terms of my understanding that it had to do more with a group of people that went out and destroyed a indigenous community.
Well, when the Pilgrims landed here, they came upon a people that had no use for a Bible. They had no cuss and swear, and they didn't find a prison or a jail or a guillotine. They had a civilized community, and they said that the Indian people would give you anything that you asked for. They would even give you the shirt off their back. He said they are perfect for exploitation. And from that day to today, there's estimated, since Columbus landed, since the Pilgrims and conquistadors landed, there's an estimated 120 million Indian people erased from the face of the earth by religion. Everything that they did, every massacre and every disease that they brought here, they had masked before they distributed it to Indian people. Before they went out and killed Indian people and scalped Indian people and slaughtered whole villages of people and destroyed all their environment, their villages and their homes, they always had church preceded it. They asked God to give them permission to do that, to kill Indian people. Manifest destiny, they call it. So we survived all that, and we have a lot to be thankful for today. But we don't wait a whole year to do that. We have it every single day of the week.
Well, I think, we're on our way to the Global Climate Conference, and I think, recognizing that the Earth situation is where it is, that bringing back a traditional kind of point of view. So what's your words to the folks that are looking at the international issues with global climate?
Well, they ought to talk to a lot of the Indian people and elders. Thomas Binyanka passed away several years ago, but he said that he didn't have to lift a finger. They're the only tribe in the nation that never declared war or fought a war, even with other tribes. Never fought a war with the government. And he said they didn't have to do that because if man's technology would destroy himself. And we're in that era right now. Today, we're in that era right now today where that fulfillment of those prophecies are coming about. The water is unfit to drink. They told us that we'd be paying more for a pint of water than we would for a gallon of gasoline. during our lifetime. Look at today, $3.49 for a gallon of gasoline, and still we're paying more for water than that. You buy a little bottle of Perrier in a restaurant, it's $5. Any kind of spring water comes from all over the world today. I live in a land of sky blue water, 10,000 lakes. Mississippi River starts on my reservation. But the water in the city all comes off the Mississippi. Highest cancer rate in the nation. So we're in that era where they've destroyed everything. And myself, I think it's too far. It's too far to make that change. Maybe they can slow up what is happening, but I don't think they'll ever be able to make that change.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us here for a little bit. I know you're going to get going. Is there any last little comments you wanted to say to anybody?
Well, I have plenty of time here. I'm going to be here till Saturday, so I'm sure I'd like to talk some more to the general public. People,
okay, let's go.
Where we're at today and where we're going.
Where we're at and where we're going.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much, Clyde Belcourt. And your original name?
Nigan, the way we done. The thunder before the storm.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. All right. This is live here at the American Indian Movement 2010. And we're going to bring the music up from the...
Please rise. Thank you very much, my relatives. Got Muniga back there. Share the song with us. Sing along from where you are. You know the song? Sing it. This is a national anthem. National anthem of the American Indian Movement. Oh, here I am, still moving on. Alive and well, big family here. And with no more to say and ado, one more announcement here. We got these DVDs, Floyd Red Crow Westerman, 2 hours right here for $5, okay? See Stephen right here, the guy with the hat. Okay, so we're going to have Clyde Belcourt come up and give a talk, State of the Nation. Somebody hit the lights back here. Somebody hit the, yeah, there you go. All right. Want to thank the drummers. Adrian, you want to just step forward a little bit before Clyde here? Adrian Larvey here is the artist who composed and drew the poster. All right, so let's give him a hand and give him a big thank you. And we got posters out there for sale. Okay, small word here from Portland AIM Drummers.
I just want to say thank you to everybody and all the support people who are here today. It's an honor to be here, to be part of American Indian movement today. I'm grateful and honored. All my relatives and my people are here today together. It's a blessing to see these people together. It really means a lot to me. It means something in the heart. We're all here, indigenous people. We're all here as one blood. I want to say thank you and Tony here and allowing us to come here today and drum for you all. I'll see you guys next year. Thank you.
All right, Clyde Belcourt, let's give him a big hand. One of our leaders here. Follow Clyde to the end.
Oh, Buju, Nigan the way we done in Disney cause. Osishak, Dodain, Anishinaabe, Ogichida, Three Fire Society, gathering of the Sacred Pipes Sundance. My spirit name that came directly from Gitchimanatu, the grandfather, the Great Spirit, through vision, through dreams, through fasting, is Nigan the way we done, or the thunder before the storm. And I like that a lot better than Clyde. I don't know where that came from. But when I was born 75 years ago, like every one of you in this room, we were forbidden to have Indian names. If we did, we had to hide them. It's something that was spoken in schools, particularly the parochial schools of America and the boarding schools. We all know what the boarding schools have done to our way of life and how the government collaborated, with churches, subsidizing them to kidnap our children, take them hundreds of miles away from home, strip them of their language, their culture, and their traditional way of life. We all know that history. We've heard it. In my home, it was hidden from me when I was a little boy. I remember the old people coming to my house late at night when they thought all of us were sleeping. I have 7 sisters and 4 other brothers. And our old lady Mitchell, old lady Big Bear, Mrs. Smith would come in there. He would knock on the door 10, 11 at night. And they'd greet one another in the Anishinaabe language. And then they would start playing cards and telling stories in this strange language, not knowing what they were saying. But I remember them being so happy. I remember them happy, laughing so hard sometimes they were crying, falling right off their chair. Then we'd go to sleep. The alarm clock would go off in the morning and we get up. Mom, I heard you talking to old lady Mitchell last night. Mrs. Bigbear, you were having such a wonderful time. You were so happy. What were you talking about? What were you talking about? He said, oh, shush. Go to school. Study hard. Who knows, you might be president someday, huh? How many of us were told that when we were children? And I remember when the storms would come, a rainstorm, my mom could hardly walk. Like hundreds and thousands of mothers and aunties and grandmas across America. Mom, what's wrong with your legs? And she'd blame it on the weather, like hundreds and thousands of mothers in America. Arthritis, you say. It wasn't until long after the formation of the American Indian movement that we start learning the truth. My mother was scared to death when the American Indian movement formed. And we started looking at the organized religion, the church, and particularly the Catholics, where I come from. It was the Benedictine, it was the law enforcement arm of the Catholic Church where I got my education. Nuns that make the front line of the Green Bay Packers look like a bunch of punks. Huh? You'd swear they were on roller skates or something, because when you did something wrong, they could just spin around and catch you. Where they'd line you up every Sunday morning, Monday morning when you come to school, and whack your hands with rulers in front of the class. And if you looked at my hands and my knuckles, every single one of them had scars on them. But I didn't like school. I hated school. I hated it. First thing they taught me when I went to school, they had some guy up by the blackboard. He had on little white silk stockings, patent leather, high-heel shoes, little breeches, ruffled shirt, blonde wig, rouge on his cheeks, wooden teeth. They tried to tell me that was the father of my country. My grandfather was White Crane. He was one of the principal chiefs of our nation. He didn't look like Boy George. Didn't look a bit like him. Then you had to pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. They try to tell you that some pirate, I found out later, 18,000 miles off his course, discovered America and Indian people. Today we're learning the truth. Took a long time to get it out, to get them to admit it. When Columbus landed here, he said he came upon a people, and the Pilgrims too. He came upon a people that had no use for a Bible, didn't know how to cuss and swear. Alcohol was not part of their chemistry, not part of what they drank. The only living culture in the world that had no trace of alcohol in it. They couldn't find a prison, they couldn't find a jail. Columbus said, anything you ask them for, anything, they would take it off their back and they would give it to you. He sent word back, they are perfect. Perfect for exploitation. When they didn't bring them enough gold, they start cutting the fingers and hands, and pretty soon they start taking the bodies, bounties. 120 million Indian people erased from the face of the earth since Columbus and the conquistadors. We were never taught anything like that in the curriculas of the public and parochial school systems of America. Absolutely nothing. Because they didn't know any better. They themselves were not taught any different. The public and parochial school systems yet today are totally scholastically retarded when it comes to Indian people, their culture, their tradition, their traditional way of life. Nothing is said about the contributions that Indian people made to modern day society. 70-some% of all the food that's consumed in the world today came right here from Indian people. Medical science and doctors have said they haven't come up with a medicine yet that Indian people didn't have used in practice. 3 years ago, I was invited down to a little place called Teotihuacan, about 60 miles out of Mexico City, by women. I was invited to come to a moon dance. Young women, Native women from all over Mexico, Central and South America gathered there to dance and pray during the full moon. And when I was there, I got to go into Teotihuacan, the oldest city in the world. I used to have people tell me about that Crow Dog's Paradise, the Sundance. Mexican brothers that would come up, telling me that Indian people were practicing brain surgery while the Spaniards were still living in caves over in Europe. And I got to see that with my own naked eye. They took me into Teotihuacan where they're excavating the city. They had a channel of water come down in through the city. Over 280,000 people lived there. And they had little viaducts that would feed that water into all the homes and apartments, 3-story apartments. And when that water would come back and flow out into the stream and out of the city, the farmers would come in and they'd separate the feces from the water. And they'd go out and they would fertilize their gardens. They had running water when the Spaniards were still living in caves over in Europe. Then I started telling them about Sundancers I met that come up that told me that they found evidence that they were practicing brain surgery. And the guy says, come on with me. There's Indian people doing that excavation now. But before that was the Caucasian, white people that did that. Now Indian people are doing that. And they said, come on with me, we want to show you something. They took me back in the corner and there was hundreds of skulls that had been dug up before they did, before they start their hours and work there. And they started picking up these skulls and they had little pinholes. Some of them were 5, 10, 20 years apart. Were they able to go in? Somehow they were able to go in and extract different pressures on the brain and diseases that those people had, and they survived it. Once again, they were doing that when the Spaniards were living in caves over in Europe. And when I got into Teotihuacan, or into Mexico City in the barrio there, they knew I was tired from the trip, so the ladies that invited me down there, they took me up to their house and cleaned up, and I went and lay down. He says, get some rest, we'll come back to get you later. About 4 hours later, they came back to get me. And we went to this big walled off, like a hacienda, big walled off fort-like. I see wagons all over, horse-drawn wagons and cars, but I didn't see no people. And when they opened this big oak doors, swung open from this hacienda, I saw mexicas for 2 solid blocks lined up on both sides of the road. And they started cheering. And the women came out and they put a bunch of flowers around my neck and they took my arms and they led me in there, and all those mexicas, hundreds of them, started dancing. And they took me into this big courtyard, had a medicine wheel about big as this room here, all made out of fruit and vegetables and medicine. I've never seen anything so beautiful in my life. And they sat me down in a big chair and they started dancing. Danced for over an hour without stopping. And then they stopped. And they welcomed me and introduced me. And I told them about the prophecy. I told them about the eagle and the condor and how that was starting to come together now. We're coming back together, north and south. People were cheering. They're blowing these whistles and everything. And they were cheering. They had a special dance. After I gave my talk, they had a special dance, and I started dancing with them. I really got into it, you know. Pretty soon they were all watching, standing around watching. I was dancing all by myself. I don't know where the power and the strength came from, but I was dancing like they were. And finally the drums started slowing down, and they took me over and they put me in this chair. And they started bringing gifts to me. Everybody, almost everybody had some kind of a gift, giving me bowls and giving me beadwork and all the stuff that they do. I was piling them up on the side of me. I had piles of blankets and everything. And here comes this little boy about 12 years old, 14 years old, came up to me and he had this beautiful wrapped present for me. This is after I gave this big talk about the prophecy about the condor and the eagle. He came and laid that on my lap, and naturally I was going to take it and put it aside with all the other stuff. He got all excited, talking to his grandpa. He wanted it opened right there, wanted to show it right there, because it related to what I was talking about. And I unraveled that beautiful cloth. And this condor feather. I told him how the condor and the eagle were going to come together. He handed me that beautiful wrapped present, aimed to beat out this condor. The fulfillment of that prophecy took place right before our very eyes that night. And I had some feathers with me, and I got them out, and I told him to bring that little boy up. We tied those feathers, eagle feather in his hair. That was a fulfillment of the prophecy. My mother, that was taken away from her reservation when she was 9 years old and kept in a boarding school for 12 solid years, never got to see what this movement was really all about. My mother told me that I had to forget about the past and think about the future. And I was telling my mother, like I've told every tribal chairman in America and anybody that confronted me, they used to tell me, oh, you got to forget about the past and think about the future. Huh? I told my own mother that if we forget about our past, we'll never have a future. If we don't stand up now and be warriors again, if we don't take back what is rightfully ours, we might as well go dig a hole and jump in it because it was all over. My mother was scared. Saw me being shot at and beat up and jailed in prison. A year and a half time, I had 44 felonies against me for the BIA takeover and the occupation or liberation of Wounded Knee in 1973. Wounded Knee alone facing over 300 years in prison plus 2 life sentences. I didn't know which one I was going to do first. Huh? But we were freed. We proved that it was the United States government that was guilty at Wounded Knee, guilty of governmental misconduct, illegal use of military force, illegal search and seizure. We proved that in court. When after 9.5 months, when the case went to the jury, there was a white woman, young lady, 46 years old. All the stories were coming out in the paper. Everything was turning our way. Even the jurors, when they come in the morning, someone would smile and nod their head to us. When I went to the jury 2 hours later, this young lady had a heart attack. They already excused the alternate jurors. So the judge called us into the courtroom. His name was Judge Nichols, Fred Nichols, a racist judge from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Called us into his courtroom. We all went in there with our lawyers, William Kunstler, Douglas Hall, Larry Leventhal, Ken Tilson, Russell, Dennis, all of us went into his chambers. He wanted to use one of the alternative jurors, and the United States Justice Department wouldn't let him. They knew it was in our favor. They knew something good was going to happen, so they wanted to call a mistrial. Spent over $5 million. $5 million in nine longest criminal trial in the history of this government. Wounded Knee trials. Wanted to call for a mistrial and try us all again. And this racist judge stood up and he said, it's not the Indian people that are guilty here. It's the United States federal government. Who do you think you are, he said, that you can use military forces without congressional or presidential approval? Use all the federal forces, all the judicial forces, the Justice Department, FBI, the Goon Squad, of the tribal police, and all the John Birch societies, and all the people that participate, all the different law enforcement. It's not the Indian people that are guilty here, it's you. Guilty of governmental misconduct, illegal use of military forces, illegal search and seizure. He said that rivers of justice have been muddied in my courtroom for 9.5 months. And I refuse to allow it to go any further. And he banged his gavel on his desk and dismissed all the charges. That's the power. That's the power of people when they stand together. When they become family, when they become warriors, and they look out and take care of one another. When they make a commitment of what they're going to do with their life. When they're willing to lay down their life for their people. That's what can happen. And my mother finally saw it. She saw the beautiful powwows. She saw the legal rights centers, saw the AIM patrol, saw the clinics, send us housing, saw the job training, all the beautiful things that was happening again. Hundreds of thousands of people coming up at dances, 20, 30 drums showing up at a celebration on our reservation in the urban area. And in the first powwow we had in Minneapolis in the basement of a church, we had to go down and find an individual. He's actually in a bar. He's the only one that knew how to sing. His name was Johnny Smith. And he established a drum. We made one rule. If anybody was drinking, had alcohol and had been using, they could not come near that drum. They could not dance out in that sacred circle if they were using. Little boys came with bells tied around their Levi's. A couple of girls came with shawls. 2 ladies came all the way from Red Lake. They were jingle dresses. That's when the jingle dress was sacred. That's when it was used only for healing purposes. The only time they danced was doing healing songs, doing honor songs, or Gichita songs. And you know what it's like today. Today they're wearing dresses. Some young ladies, they'll dress 3 times during a powwow. $10,000 in dresses, beadwork, and jingle work. We had a powwow on my reservation here last weekend. 27 drums showed up. 27 drums, hundreds, thousands of people all over America are celebrating our culture today. And you know what? It's merely a fulfillment of prophecy. It's merely a fulfillment of prophecy. When they said that little of nothing was being taught in the public and parochial school systems of America, when we would be surrounded by forts and placed on reservations, when we were dying of diseases that were brought here from across the water by those immigrants that came here, the real immigrants. When we lost all of our land, all of our gold, all of our oil, all of our resources, all of our forests were cut down. All of our people, half our people, were relocated off the reservation into urban areas. When little of nothing was left, the people would stand up again. We didn't know it was the American Indian movement. The other day I told a story about Philip Deere. Yeah? There's a lot of you in this room know who Philip Deere was. He was one of our traditional people, spiritual leaders of the American Indian movement. In 1972, Philip Deere was in the spring, he was out cleaning his ditches, getting the rocks out of the culvert because his land would flood over. He had to collect all of these rocks, put them in. All of a sudden, Philip Deere thought he heard a drum. He walked out on the road and he looked way down this gravel road and there was nothing. He went back and he was cleaning his ditch and he heard a drum again. He heard a drum again. And he started thinking about the Muskogee prophecy. They said during the 5th generation, after the removal of the 5 civilized tribes that were forced to march all across America, who carried his fire all the way there, rebuilt the sweat lodge. Couldn't even put a sweat lodge above ground. He dug a hole in the ground under his garden. That's where his sweat lodge was. He had to cover it up with tarp and flowers and corn to make it look like it was a garden. They had to hide it from the church, hide it from the government, because it was outlawed. He said 5 generations from the removal, the people would stand up, they would come back. He heard that drum again. He ran out on the road. And way down, you could see dust. And as it got closer, people in red shirts, red jackets, red berets, little braids about that long, were coming down the road. He said, I threw my shovel in the ditch, and it's still there today. I pushed my wheelbarrow in a ditch, and he said, I joined the American Indian movement. And he told us there was a fulfillment of prophecy. My mom didn't get to see all that. She didn't get to see all that. But she finally broke down one night. She said, I want to tell you, all your life you've been telling me. All your life you've been asking me questions about my knees swelling up on me. Why were we talking Indian? She didn't want us to. And she said, I was doing that to protect you. I didn't want you to be punished like hundreds and thousands of our mothers and aunties and grandmas here in America, land of the free, home of the brave, were punished. And she says not only did she have to scrub floors, hundreds and thousands like her, they give her a little toothbrush and a little pail of water. And every time she got caught speaking Indian or singing, she had to get down and scrub the floors and clean out the urinals and the toilets. All of our mothers and grandmothers and aunties went through that. That's why I didn't want you to speak Indian. I didn't want you to know those Indian ways because I didn't want you to be punished for it. And then she finally told me the ending of that story. That toward the end, not just her, hundreds and thousands like her, they tied sacks of marbles on her knees. And she had to scrub the floors with those marbles on her knees. Made me cry. Made me cry when she told me that story. But it justified everything that I was involved in. If I had to give my life to make that change, I was willing and more willing that night after hearing my mother. My mother never went to the hospital. Like many of your mothers, many of your grandmothers, many of your aunties, they never go to the hospital. They always would send me, go see old lady Mitchell, go see Mrs. Big Bear. They had a cold or a flu or whatever it was, they had a medicine for that. We'd go get that medicine and bring it home. A couple of days later, she'd be up, fine. Don't ever put me in a hospital. But she had a stroke one night. And I tried to take her to the hospital, and she fought me. Actually started punching me and everything. I finally talked to her. I didn't want to go in the ambulance. Took her in a cab, taxi cab. And we went down there, and she finally went brain dead. Don't ever allow them to hook me up. I was the only one left out of all those 12 children. We hooked her up to keep her going. called my brother in Denver, called my sister way out in Seattle, all the relocation areas, and told them what had happened. They said, whatever decision you make, we'll support you. So I called the doctors, and I called our old best friend, old Lady Smith. They spoke Anishinaabe together with one another and asked her to come. She said, you're doing the right thing. Signed the paperwork, pulled the plug. And all of a sudden, my mother, supposed to be brain dead, starts singing in the Anishinaabe language. And old Lady Smith got down and listened, and she started smiling at me, and she was gone. What is she singing about? What was she saying? She said she was singing about the beautiful clear lakes of white earth, the birch bark trees and the wild rice beds, and the white sandy beaches. Your mom just went home. It's the only time I remember feeling so peaceful. And I made a commitment that this movement would go forever. Unbelievable. You know, when people think about the American Indian movement, they think of somebody standing on a hill overlooking Wounded Knee with an AK in their hand. They don't see the real meaning. They don't see that this movement affected people all over the Americas, all the way to Geneva, all the way to the World Council churches, all over the world. This movement has affected lives. People that were telling us to forget about the past and think about the future, now they got their own schools, they got their own colleges, they got their own scholarship program. In Minneapolis, the immersions of languages are going on. Little children, 3 or 4 years old, are speaking the Anishinaabe language, Dakota language, Winnebago language. All of it is coming back. Everything that the Creator promised us is coming back. That's what the movement is, a movement. It's not an organization, not the NAACP or anything like that. This is a spiritual movement. In the city of Minneapolis, every objective and goal that we thought we stood for is working today. We operate one of the top job training programs in the nation, and Dr. Leon Sullivan, a black leader, one of Martin Luther King's headsmen, said that one of the premier job training programs in the world is the American Indian Opportunities Industrialization Center in Minneapolis. In 31 years, we have trained over 50,000 young men and women. Technology, sent them to colleges, come to nurses and doctors. Over 50,000. Of them, 40-some thousand taken right off from welfare rolls and put on payrolls. We operate a legal rights center that was founded by the American Indian Movement. I'm the only remaining member, founding member, me and my wife. And we just represent our 96,000 case last month. We have attorneys that work with us for the black community, the Hispanic community, the Asian community, and the American Indian community. The chief investigator of the Indian community is sitting right there at that table there, Lonnie, right there, with my daughter. They're the important ones. They're the ones that do all the legwork, the investigation. They're the ones that determine whether we're going to take a case or not. We've taken hundreds of thousands of our children out of the parental determinations of rights cases. I call them termination of rights. We put a stop to the foster policies of the state governments and the welfare systems that strict Indian children from their families, ship them off to maybe 3 different families, 3 different religions, not even allowed to communicate with one another, not allowed to even communicate with their mother. Even the mother don't know what's happening. We put a stop to that. The American Indian Movement and the Legal Rights Center helped write the Indian Child Welfare Act. We run 2 of the only Native American community clinics in America in an urban setting. We run the only housing program. We started the first survival school system. They learn all the same things that any public school student would learn. The only difference, they learn it from an Indian point of view. All the literature and all the history, the true history of how Indian people lost their land is taught to these young people. Some of our early graduates are now teachers today. Some have went through to become doctors, doctorate degrees. And the same tribal chairman were saying, oh, you got to forget about the past. Think about the future. Now with the explosion of the casino industry, they all have colleges and they have their own school, they have their own language classes. Everything they were telling us that we had to give up and put away, they're doing today. That's the power. That's what the American Indian movement is all about. And I'm excited coming here. I've been coming here for several years, but I've seen a tremendous turnout today. I met with people that want to start support groups. They want to start chapters in their own community. They want to take control of their family. They want to take control of their community. They want to take control of their tribe and their nation, their culture and traditional way of life. There's emergence of the movement that's taken on today. Why do we come here? We say, why are you going there? Celebrate Thanksgiving. That's what we have a lot to be thankful for, us Indian people. I'm not going there to celebrate Thanksgiving. I'm going there to be with Native people. I want to go to Alcatraz with people that think like I do, think like we do. Because we had Thanksgiving for hundreds and thousands of years before the Pilgrims got here. My relatives, there was a time in our history that every single thing that we did, everything that we did, we went out to plant a garden. Where I come on, you went to tap the maple sugar tree to get that sap out. Went to hunt the buffalo, go fishing, pick blueberries, harvest the wild rice. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't do anything without a prayer, without a ceremony, without a song, without a dance. I remember that as a little boy. I'm 74 years old. My father was a First World War veteran. 50,000 Native people fought in the First World War. We don't hear anything about that. He came home with 17 machine gun wounds, gassed and bloated. When the Allied forces went into Germany, my father, after they gassed him and machine gunned him, 17 times he got hit. He was still alive when the Allied forces, another 3 or 4 other Marines, they dug under, crawled under dead bodies and covered themselves up. And when they come to load up the bodies, they found my father was still breathing, and a few others. He came home disabled, totally disabled. Not totally, he had 11 children. But he came home disabled, my father. In 1918 and 1924, 6 years later, the United States government passed the Indian Citizenship Act. Is that nice of them? Allowing him to be a citizen in his own country. A young man going to Carlisle that enlisted in the Marine Corps. He didn't enlist because he wanted to go over and kill people, fight for the so-called freedom and democracy of the United States government. He went there to get out of that brutal educational system that he was in. They didn't recognize him until 6 years after he came home, so he could get his veterans checks and his disability. We never heard anything about that. So everything, we used to go out, my dad, that's all he could do was oar a boat all day. We'd fish. By 4 or 5 in the evening, we'd have so much fish, we'd have to put them on stringers, and they'd be in the water of the boat behind us. Big my Dad, why? We're tired, let's go home. We said, just a little bit more, we'll go. Maybe get 40, 50 more walleyes, and he'd go into the shore, and we'd string them up in a pole. Me and my brother Vernon, we'd carry him home about 3 miles. When we got to my home, my mom and my sister and everybody and some of the young men would be waiting for us. They'd be waiting for us. She'd scale all those walleye and fillet them. We didn't have refrigeration. In the wintertime, she'd put them in tubs of water, and we'd pull them on a toboggan or a sled. In the summertime, we'd put them on a wagon, some cold water, because we didn't have refrigeration. And we were directed to go out to all the others, all the handicapped people. People that didn't have nobody to hunt, nobody to fish for them anymore. We had to give all those walleye away. By the time we got home, the dark, getting dark, the cars and old buggies and Model Ts and Model As parked in our driveway. You'd hear that little drum going, hear people laughing, singing, having a good time. And guess what we had? Huh? Guess what we had? We didn't wait for Abraham Lincoln to declare the last Thursday of the month of November Thanksgiving. We had Thanksgiving every single day of the week. Everything that we did, every morning when we got up, way before the morning star come out, we had to go out and put our tobacco out, build a fire, and make our offerings and ask guidance from the Creator. Everything that we did. We couldn't even go out and harvest the wild rice till we gave away all of last year's crop. We had to give that away to all the handicapped and elderly people that didn't have food before we could go out and rice again. To start a whole new cycle of life. That's the way it was at one time for all of us. That's the way it's beginning to be again, and that's the way it's going to be forever. That's what this American Indian movement is all about. I told the other day, how I went into Pine Ridge in 1970. It's the only remaining Sundance in America. When I was in prisons, Stillwater State Prison, a brother of mine named Eddie Benton Benet came and visited me in solitary confinement. Peeked through a little thing like that in solitary confinement, calling my name about 3 times before I would answer. And finally, I went and peeked through this little hole in the cell door, and it was Eddie Benton Benet. He said the caseworker, a white caseworker of all people, had handled all the Indian inmates in there, loved Indians. His little boy, he had rheumatic fever, almost died. Started reading books about Indians, fell in love with Indians. So it was natural for him to handle all the Indian cases in the institution. And they found out, they discovered that every single Indian in that institution was in there for alcohol-related crimes. Every one of them was in there for lesser crimes, but they did the most time. They did more time in rapists and murderers. They never took advantage of the time, never went into skilled and technical trades, never went on to college courses, that the correspondence course, to better themselves. Every single one of them, including myself, was a repeat offender. And they set it up. They figured it out, maybe if we can start some type of culture program. Teach these young men about their beautiful history, make them feel good about themselves. Maybe they want to do something about their alcohol problem. Maybe they want to do something about their educational levels. Maybe they want to go to college and do something with their life. But they couldn't do it. They had to have an organizer. And spending most of my life in jail, we had the best football team, we had the best baseball team. They used to bring professional fighters in there, and we'd whip up on them. Had the best boxing team. And I organized every single one of them. So they knew they needed somebody to help them, somebody to organize for them. And I cut a deal with them. As you led me on, put me in this honor dorm, and put me back and I was studying to be a first-class engineer at that time. Put me back on a job, I'll come out and help you. And they did. And they come and got me out. And out of 120 Indian inmates, we got 82 of them organized. And we started learning from William Whipple Warren and Black Elk Speaks the history of the Ojibwe Nation, about our spirituality. I got so into it, I started to mean when I was an eagle at night, flying over the land in South Dakota somewhere and seeing teepees and a beautiful Sundance that Black Elk talked about. When I got out of jail, I wanted to go to a Sundance. Finally, about 1.5 years after I got out of jail, I got invited to go to the only remaining Sundance left in America on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And I went there. Inquired in town, where is it? They give me directions to get out there, and I went out there. Drove in my car, and I must be at the wrong place here. Food stands all the way around the arbor, merry-go-rounds and Ferris wheels. Rodeo going on out in the field. They're having a powwow. I said, where's the Sundance? They said, this is the Sundance. I said, what do you mean? They take the Sundance drum out about 2 o'clock and they bring the powwow drum in, and all the drunks come in. I was mad, I was upset, wanted to do something. I met Layman Brightman there from over here in Berkeley. So I met Layman. We were walking around the arbor and we were just disgusted. Ran into my brother Dennis and Russell. And they were sundancing there. I forget which one of them had a snow cone and the other one had a fry bread hamburger. What's going on here, you know? Well, they said, if you think this is bad, wait till Sunday. I said, what's going to happen Sunday? They said the Catholic priest comes in and serves communion at noontime, and that's the end of the Sundance. And I said, oh, no, that's not going to happen. Not on my shift. Yeah. Oh, don't do nothing. The movement's just getting started, man. You'll turn everybody against us if you try to stop that. I said, that Catholic priest is not going to come in here on Sunday. You better go talk to Footscrow, the Grand Chief, the great Oglala Nation. I went and talked to him. He said, they gave me tobacco. I have to run this Sundance. And I told him that we were not going to allow that priest. And to an interpreter, he said, you better talk to the warriors. I said, who are the warriors? He said, the Sundancers, and I almost laughed. I said, they're not warriors. They were dragging one buffalo skull with a horse harness on, falling down. That's how weak we became as a nation, as a people. Not just Oglala, Chippewas. We all been through that. We all been through that. Alcohol, abuse, and everything controlled our lives. We didn't want to stand up and afraid to stand up for anything. And I went and talked to the Sundancers. After about an hour, longest break they had during the Sundance, I finally got them to take a vote that whatever we do, they would support us. So the next day at noon, here comes this Catholic priest, all in Lakota beaded white vestments, carrying a bundle in his arm. So I found out later he had a sacred pipe in that bundle. 2 little altar boys coming, I guess one was carrying the blood of Jesus Christ, you know, some wine in a bottle or something, pitcher. The other one was carrying some bread. I don't know if it was fry bread or what it was. It was supposed to be the body of Jesus Christ. And me and Layman walked out there. Crowd started screaming and hollering. Could hear sirens coming in the background. The word spread all over the reservation. Something was going to happen that day. Police and everybody were on standby. Start throwing tomatoes and fry bread and anything they could get their hands on, telling us to get out of there, go on home. You're Anishinaabe, you don't belong here. And I said, Layman, don't even listen to them. We walked on, I said, Father, the Sundancers no longer want you here. They can't have the Sundance without. They can't do the Native American church. That's why they call it the Native American church. They can't use peyote unless they have the Bible. When they were having visions, full-bloods were having visions, there were visions about Jesus Christ. When they get on that peyote, they start dreaming about Jesus Christ and the Virgin Mary, instead about the crazy horse and the great chiefs that took them to where they were. Today, they can't have this Sundance without me. Father, I'm going to ask you very kindly, will you please leave? Who are you? I said, I'm Clyde Belkert, American Indian Movement. Oh, I've heard about you rabble-rousers. Started laughing at me. You better leave, the police are coming. I said, Father, please, please, I'm begging you, please leave. We don't have no trouble here. And he said, what are you going to do if I don't leave? And I took one arm and put it around my shoulder, and Layman took the other arm and took him out. There are over 70 Sundances on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation today. Over 60 on an adjoining reservation called Rosebud. All the way from the Northwest Territory of Canada all the way down to the southern tip of South America. Hundreds and thousands and millions of our people are coming together again in the old traditional way of life and their ceremonies. A beautiful way of life that existed for hundreds and thousands of years. Hundreds and thousands of years. You know, our people are burying their own people. They're having their own ceremonies when somebody prays, somebody passes today. We're taking care of them. The church is not doing that. We had a way of doing that. An old brother of mine, Eddie Benton Benet, leading voice, one day he jokingly told all the Indian people, I don't know what you argue about Christianity and traditionalism for. He says, ain't none of you going to heaven anyway. Some little kid, what do you mean? What do you mean I'm not going to heaven? Why? And Eddie says, because it's a gated community. It's a golden gate. So if you don't have any gold, you're not going to go there. So forget about it. And he says, you're not going to the happy hunting ground either. He said, I'm not a hunter. I'm not going to be happy there. You're going home. That's where you're going. You're going home to be with your family, be with your loved ones, be with your nation, be with all the people, all your friends that have passed on before you. That's where you're going. You're not going to limbo. You're not going to hell. You're not going to purgatory or any of those other places. You're going home. And that's where we're going. That's where we're going here in the American Indian movement. We're going home. Home to our traditional way of life. Home to be in family again. I heard the women speak here yesterday. I never felt so good listening to them, because they know that there's a tremendous amount of love and support in the movement for the women. Always has. That's where the movement started, with the women in Minneapolis. And that's where it'll end, with our women. And so I really felt good. I felt strong yesterday listening. Because in this movement, guess what? We all become related. We all become family. We all become brothers and sisters. We all become uncles and aunties and grandfathers and grandmothers. Every single one of us. When I see Madonna Gilbert or Yvonne Wandron, I came here the other night, the first thing I want to do is hug them. Hi, sister. Oh, it's so good to see you. That's where the movement, that's what the movement is all about. And if you don't have that respect, if you don't have that respect and support for the women, there's no place in this movement for you. There's no place in this movement for you. If you go home and you start calling your woman a bitch, start slapping her around and beating her and stuff, drunk, you start carrying that type of behavior around the sacred drum, there's no place here in this movement. Well, we'll work with you, we'll help you, we'll do everything that we can to get you on that red road. But if you don't want to get up on that red road and you want to crawl in the ditch, stay in the ditch. We don't need you. That's what this movement is all about. And I want to say miigwech, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you that have come here today. You look in that little book that I gave you about this interpretive center. Every objective and goal that the American Indian Movement set forth in 1968, every single one of them have been taken care of. The 20-point solution paper that was presented to the White House in 1972, every single one of them have been achieved. And now we're building this interpretive center. Get a chance, go down, take a walk down. We spent $120,000 on the architectural work for this interpretive center. It's not a museum. Anybody use the word museum at our board meetings, I fine them $100. Museums where they keep dead bodies and scalps and medicine scrolls and bundles of our people. This is a living interpretive center. We're going to tell our creation story. Our creation story. We come out of the lakes, out of the Wind Cave. Whatever tribe and nation we belong to, we have our own creation story. And that story is going to be told. It's going to be told in that interpretive center. When you walk in one door, I don't care if you're a student, grandma, grandpa, or whatever you are from other tribe, when you walk out that back door, you'll never ask another question about us because you'll know the truth. You'll know the truth. And hundreds and thousands of non-Indian people. We're built right in the middle of the University of Minnesota campus, 57,000 students there. We'll get a chance to go in and learn the truth about who we are and where we're going. And I ask every one of you to join. When we come off that wharf, off of Alcatraz on that wharf day, on Wharf 31, we're having a press conference. And we're going to release a press statement and a package to all the media and to all of you exactly where we are today and where we're going. And there's no doubt that we'll get there. There's no doubt that we'll get there. Oh, miigwech, thank you very much.
Oh, Clyde Belcourt. Do we want him back next year? Yeah, right. Yeah, we do. We do. I think we're going to have him a little earlier for his talk. And we want you to be here a little earlier, too. We all get backed up. So we're not on the scheduled time. Somebody help that man there. Okay? Okay, so we're going to have the Azteca traditional dancers. Stick around. The most important part of this evening now, and we've asked to extend the use of this place another hour because we are behind. But the last part of this evening is the youth. Our generation, our young people that we have to leave these stories to. And they want to talk to us. And they want solutions. And they want involvement. And they want guidance. And we're it. And we got to bring them close to the Sweat Lodge. The youth want to talk to us. So stick around. We're going to have the traditional Mexica dancers. And then we have a film we're going to show. So please stick around. Alvaro Talles.
gracias. Hablan inglés, español, náhuatl. ¿En qué hablamos? ¿Español? Okay. Estamos aquí nada más apoyando al movimiento. Más que nada queremos darle gracias a Antonio González, que nos da la oportunidad de estar con nosotros. Somos danzantes tradicionales de la Ciudad de México. Estamos aquí representando la cultura mexica, nahuatlaca. Y también respondiendo a lo que le llaman el Día de Acción de Gracias, que se refiere al Non-Thanksgiving Day. ¿Capish? No capish. Sabemos lo que sabemos y nada más queremos dejarle saber al mundo que la tradición indígena sigue viva. Aquí estamos. Él es Dios. Como le habíamos comentado, la tradición nahuatlaca, hicimos un permiso, como debemos de hacerlo, un permiso a las 4 direcciones, a los 4 puntos cardinales, con respeto a toda la madre tierra. Y seguimos con una ofrenda dedicada a todos nuestros ancestros que nos han dejado estas tradiciones. Una danza dedicada a Huitzilopochtli, el señor que va al lado izquierdo. aquí sencillamente para decirle al mundo que la tradición indígena sigue el movimiento. Estamos aquí porque cada año se cumple un año más de que festejan el Thanksgiving, el Día de Acción de Gracias, pero no se acuerdan de las matanzas que han hecho los europeos, españoles, en nuestras tradiciones. Estamos aquí para decirle al mundo nuevamente que el movimiento indígena sigue vivo y el día que nos quiten nuestras raíces es cuando nos van a acabar, pero mientras, aquí estamos. Bueno, si nos corren, pues ya. Pero no, aquí estamos. Como dicen nuestros antepasados, Intlanextia Tonatiuh, que el sol siempre ilumine nuestros corazones. Él es Dios. ¡Vámonos! ¡Sí! Vamos a hacer una danza que nos vamos a purificar todos nosotros, pero más que nada purificar el sistema que tenemos. En nuestra lengua le llamamos la danza de Ixtacuautli, una danza dedicada a la purificación de nuestro calendario azteca, que se dedica cada 52 años en nuestro calendario. Mexica Tiahuel. ¡Él es Dios! raza de México, les mandamos esta oración a todos nuestros compadritos de aquí de Norteamérica, toda la comunidad nativa del norte, centro, Sudamérica y todos los nativos de todo el mundo. Estamos vivos y es por una razón. La razón es de que seguimos vivos. Él es Dios. como empezamos, pidiéndole permiso a nuestras 4 direcciones de la vida, a nuestros 4 principales elementos: fuego, tierra, aire y viento. Él es Dios. ¡Órale! una danza con el respeto a la madre tierra. En nuestra lengua nahuatlaca le llamamos Tonantzin, que significa nuestra madre tierra. ¡Él es Dios!
acompañándolos como todos los años que vamos. Vamos a estar mañana con ustedes celebrando el Northern Skin. ¿Está bien?
¡Él es Dios! All right, traditional Mexica dancers. Irma and Alvaro have been with us at Alcatraz for like a couple decades, okay? All right, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you all to come in, and we're going to dispense with a film, an important film we wanted you to see. Instead, I have copies of it. If you want a copy, come and see me. I'll give you a copy. Dorothy left me with a whole bag, and in the interest of time, I'd like to invite George Galvez and Felipe Hernandez to come up and begin this program about youth development, cultural and spiritual development, youth in our community. Very important. So everybody getting a little close, and here we go, George Galvez and Felipe Hernandez.
So if I could just invite everyone, first of all, to please get into a circle. Just if you could please indulge us and gather in a circle, grab chairs. It's a small enough group that I think we can try to gather. I know we've been talking a lot about recovering our traditional ways, and so we don't want anyone's back to send anyone else. We want to gather in a circle and acknowledge each and every one of us.
And if there's people outside in the back, if we can bring them in.
This isn't wireless, huh? There's not a wireless mic?
Why is there such a movie? Oh, you asked for a circle?
So we could move in closer and everybody gather in the circle. Appreciate that. Thank you. It's all good, cheek to cheek. We're all family. No shame in the game.
We're also looking for a purple phone that somebody lost over in the other room in the kitchen. If you see a purple phone and a bag, I believe there was a bag missing. Test.
To the kitchen.
I still see a lot of folks in the back. If we could just gather into a close-knit circle, I don't think anybody will hurt anybody else. I was asked to announce that there is a black bag missing and a purple phone. If anyone has found that, if they could please return it to the kitchen, it would be greatly appreciated. There's a reward.
75 cents.
And lots of good spirits and energy. So it's not quite a circle yet. I think it's like I don't know what kind of shape that is. It's interesting though. So, but if we could make one circle, so we could just kind of be one heart, you know, one people, one mind. The same way when we sit at that drum or we gather in Inipi, we try to gather in a sacred manner. We always try to gather in a circle. If there's empty chairs, let's just pull them out and make it a little bit closer and tighter. And I'll ask one more time if folks who are kind of sitting outside the circle, if you could please join us. Really appreciate it. Just want to ask that in a good way. All right, thank you. So this panel is to kind of talk about our next generation, our youth, our young people, and it kind of evolved. I think initially when we were invited to come speak, it was about criminalizing our young people, our youth in the prison industrial complex and all these different kinds of things that are happening, gang injunctions and all that. But it felt like we didn't want to just talk about those things. We really wanted to kind of talk about it more about how are we preparing the next generation, you know, recognizing that across Indian country that we have historical intergenerational trauma, and that right now, you know, a lot of people who have been talking in the last few days and just in the short time I've been here, the last few hours, I've heard many people kind of speaking and referring to that time of prophecy that we live in right now, that this is a time of prophecy, that the elders have talked about this time as a time of renewal and a time of regeneration, you know, and we see a lot of problems and challenges, you know, across our communities. And we know that recovering and reclaiming and relearning our culture is our strength, culture is our healing, and culture is our prevention. So I asked my brother Rencho, and he's invited his cousin Red House also, who are doing some work informally, just in our urban res community here in the Bay Area, working with some of the young men. It's not something that's a funded project. We got to get kind of beyond the nonprofit industrial complex. Like they say, the revolution will not be funded, right? And this is just work that comes from spirit, teaching the young people the traditions, the songs, bringing them to ceremonies. And we've seen some real powerful transformation with some of the young men in our community that we wish that they could be here. And perhaps one of the things we can talk about today here in this circle is how we can begin to plan better, because it's also very appropriate that we're kind of like the last panel, because we always talk about our children, we always talk about our youth, and we talk about how they're the most important thing, and that they're right there in the corner, they're right there in the center, but then they always kind of get pushed to the back and to the very end. They're kind of like the last thought, And so it's kind of appropriate that we're here now at the end of this conference, and we're just now beginning to talk about our youth and our children and our young people. So, I just kind of want to say that in a good way and recognize that each and every one of us in here is a teacher and has teachings. Each and every one of us has a gift, something to offer, and that's what one of the things, the teachings we're trying to pass on to our young people, is that each and every single one of them has a gift, something innate that Creator has given them, something to offer to their community and to their people. And part of our role as adults or as elders and whatnot, we use that term, a lot of us, no one wants to, I have, elders in my life over 60, and they still get uncomfortable being called elders sometimes, right? Oh, I'm not an elder, I'm not. But, we also need to kind of also recognize that every single one of us is an elder to someone, and so a long time ago, and we talk about that intergenerational historical trauma. A long time ago, my first memory was watching, the violence in my home. My father beat my mother. And one of my most vivid memories was my father almost killing my mother and me having to go across the street to the neighbors and to call the police on my father, right? And the violence that was produced in my home, I reproduced on the streets later on as a young man, and didn't know it at the time, but in a lot of ways, I was raging against my father. I was raging against other brown and red men who looked like me, right? Raging against my father because I look like my dad, right? And so a lot of our young men, when we talk about abuse, we talk about physical abuse, violence, gang violence, we talk about drugs and alcohol. Those are just symptoms. Those are just symptoms, right? And it really is pressing, the greater need is that what we need in our communities is we need to begin to heal our hearts. And we know that culture is the way that we do that. And so I'm going to ask, my brother Rencho to talk a little bit about the work that he's been doing. And he brought one of the young people with him, and he brought his cousin Red House, because I think the work they've been doing is really powerful, important work. And once again, just acknowledging it's not a funded program, It's not something, it's not out of any of our Indian agencies. Sometimes we start getting into gangbanging between agencies even, or we're this, we're that, and it starts becoming a competition, and we lose focus of what's really important. And so I really respect that they've been doing this on their own time and their own dime, and they've just been doing it just driven by spirit. And so I'm going to ask my brother Rencho to come and share a little bit. And I want to, and after that, I'm going to invite each and every one of us to maybe talk a little bit and to maybe make some commitments about how we can make our young people more a part of the forefront, because I know that this is going to be an annual occurrence that each and every year we want to gather here and begin to think about how we're going to build movement. And if we're going to build a sustainable movement, it can't just be the folks who've been doing work 30, 40 years, but we has to be a passing of the baton. There has to be a passing of the baton to the next generation, So without further ado, I'm going to ask my brother Rencho to take the microphone and share a little bit about the work he's been doing.
Yeah, I just kind of got asked to do this, so I thought this panel was supposed to be for youth, but I'm 30 years old. I'm not necessarily a youth anymore. So, but my name's Rencho Wapipa, Kickapoo, Sac and Fox, and Ojibwe. So born and raised in Oakland. Some of the work really, man, we're just a lot of young brothers that grew up in the East Bay, just wanting to just keep our culture alive, man. And so we just take the initiative, and even if it's going on a hike to the Oakland Hills, and or go sweat, do things like that just to get out of the city, and get the youth to have an opportunity to be exposed to things of our own culture, and just like the natural way, because to me, like, Indian way is like a natural philosophy. That's how I view it, so I take it upon myself, me and my brother Red House, and young brothers like Ricky here, man, and there's a whole crew. There's a lot of Indian youth throughout the Bay Area that don't get an opportunity to have any connection to their own culture. We do live in an intertribal. I think I heard Tony mention how we're like an intertribal tribe. We're like many tribes that make one tribe, and come with that is like other cultures and other races, through generations and generations. So there's a big disconnection with youth and their culture. So me and my brother, man, we just and other brothers out there, my brother George, man, we trying to just collaborate and expose the young Native people to their culture so they can learn something, because from that disconnection you're seeing a lot of lack of those core values that our ways teach us. So like we did a 28-mile hike like a year ago, and we took a young brother with us named Hector. He's like only I think 14 at the time, 15 at the time, and it was just amazing to see how all of us, man, just pulled together. But with him with us, like there's a certain spiritual power that comes from those kind of things. So, we just try as much as we can, man, just to expose the kids to any kind of Indian culture, man. It could be in a nipi, or it could be a roundhouse ceremony, anything to do with, our own culture. That's the main thing. So, that's what we're doing. I personally would like to hear what the youth have to say about their own culture and things what are good ways what are ways that we can preserve our culture? I guess that would be my question to the young people here. You don't have to be necessarily American Indian, but any whatever your culture is, what's a good way to preserve your culture? Because through your culture, the way I was taught, if you know your culture, then you're able to go after anything, any of your dreams, anything you want to do, attain in your life. If you can do that through prayer, and you can do that through your traditional ways, it'll be that way. So, that would be my question to the young people is, how can we preserve our culture? What are ways that we can do that? And I don't know. I think that's I don't know what else to say. So pass it on.
My name is Ricky. I'm born and raised in Oakland, and my brother Rancho takes me everywhere around. Wants to get know my culture a little bit more, because I barely even hang out with him now, because I moved to San Leandro. So I go see him and all that, and he takes me places with my other brothers that we used to hang out with, and all our Native Americans and the people we go. We do this young men's group every Thursdays or something like that, and we do a lot of stuff to stick together and stuff and all that. And I'm glad that he's doing that, because all my friends I barely see, and pretty much it was cool that it was he was doing this to the youth and all that other stuff. But yeah, that's all I have to say.
Hi everybody, my name is Red House Poncho. All the youth just left, so you can see everything I was gonna say was directed towards them. They just left, so I just pass on the mic. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, what my cousin said, we work with the youth, and everybody here is from the city, so we're from Oakland, and we have a hard time over there with drugs and gangs and poverty and AIDS, and all these things. But like my cousin said, what we do is we combat that with our spirituality and our ceremonies. That's our main thing that we advocate to the young people. And just, I guess, I don't know what they want me to say up here, but just to tell you what we do and what we advocate for is for spiritual unity among our boys. You know, that's our number one thing. And not just with our boys. We tell them, you know, not just the Sundance or the Sweat, but everything, your roundhouse, the Native American church, you know, the longhouse, the roundhouse, pomo dancers. It doesn't matter. We tell them to go, as long as they do it in a spiritual way. You know, that's what we're advocating for them to do, and to stand against, you know, all the things that we face in the cities. And that's the main thing that we do, is that we fight against that using our ancient ways, our historical ways that that we've used for thousands of years, you know. So that's the main thing that we do. So I guess I don't know if you want to keep going around the circle here, but that's it.
Thank you.
Takiasi.
So one of the things to kind of also transition the conversation that we need to recognize is what some of our young people are being confronted with, particularly here in the cities, in the urban res, you know, San Francisco and Oakland. Both cities have recently passed gang injunctions, you know. And when we talk about the prophecies, one of the prophecies I know that was presented on earlier, and that I believe it was Clyde also talked about, and when he was sharing that story about the feather that was presented to him, that Andean condor feather in Teotihuacan, is that, you know, a long time ago, our ancestors would walk all across this continent, all across this Turtle Island, and there were no borders, right? And now we've allowed these sort of militarily enforced borders and that have been constructed by the invaders to kind of divide us, you know, to divide us. And so, you know, there's a gang injunction that's been recently passed in Oakland targeting Fruitvale community, and we know our Indian youth are being targeted. We know indigenous youth people, young people who are indigenous people to this land, but whose tribal affiliations, their tribal lineage comes from El Salvador, Guatemala, Mexico, and whatnot, are also being targeted, and how this is destabilizing our families and our communities. And so there's a couple brothers here that I'm going to invite to speak, to talk a little bit about the organizing that's happening on the gang injunction. So invite Felipe and our brother Manuel to maybe talk a little bit about that work.
I need to say something right now. I'm going to be absolutely horrified if there's all men sitting at the top. This is 2010. If all the youth are males, I'm wondering what planet we live on.
So two things to maybe address that. One is, we didn't organize this panel. We were just invited to come speak. All right? So I think you can take it up with the organizers. One. Two, I know my sister Maggie still works with the young women. She has an organization called Seventh Generation Peacekeepers, and she was invited to be here, and unfortunately wasn't able to be here. And I think there's also, we're opening it up for dialogue, you know. Because we know that each and every one of us has something to share. But what I did want to say is actually to kind of address that, is that we're also organizing a boys and men's Native wellness gathering. And part of the reason is that it's also been the men who have caused a lot of the pain and the hurt in our communities. And when we look at who's doing the work in our communities, it's actually the women who've been carrying the work. And so what we need to do is to begin to talk about, how do we restore that sacred hoop? We need to bring our men back into the circle. You know, we need to heal our men. And, you know, when we talk about just the boys, how are we guiding our boys into responsible manhood? Well, some of our older men don't have the teachings either, you know. So I think it's also appropriate to begin to talk about how we're doing that work, you know, because that's been kind of the element that's been absent from the equation for a long time and has caused a lot of pain in our communities and families. So, but I agree. I think that there need to be. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. So. So we're gonna open it up to anybody that wants to speak up, and I remember seeing a couple of women actually in our meetings. My name's Felipe Hernandez. I want to thank Game West and Tony for inviting me and for having George come and speak here also. Since February of this year, over in North Oakland, we've been fighting the gang injunction that runs from the border north of Berkeley into Broadway. And I started getting involved with this gang injunction work because I'm from Los Angeles. And in Los Angeles, it's been notorious for gang violence and these gang injunctions. They've been targeting community of color, youth, mostly youth. Again, they're not targeting the actual cause of the violence, the cause of the problem. They're going after the youth. For me personally, I've seen a lot of destruction in my community throughout the years. Heroin was affecting my community in East LA just as much as crack cocaine. With that, a lot of violence came into my community. My education was not there for me. My community was. The fact that I went to a Wilson High School, a historic Chicano high school where the walkouts were part of, and I had no idea that the walkouts happened in my high school. If I knew this history, if I had this history, my life would be a little bit different. But I didn't know this. My high school was known for their partying, for their drug abuse. Education wasn't there. I graduated, and I didn't know what my diploma said. I didn't know that it had my name on there. But I still graduated. And it wasn't until I came to the Bay Area where I saw organizers like George, like Tony, that were doing a lot of community work. And at the same time, I was looking for something. Something was missing within me. And that something is something that the youth is missing. They don't know about it, but they're missing it, and that's spirituality. So I started coming up to brothers like George and Tony, Nane, other brothers, other elders that I felt that would be able to guide me. And sure enough, it's been a year now. Sunrise ceremony last year was the beginning of my journey. And look at where I'm at now, in this circle, talking to you people about my journey, but also about the youth organizing that I've been doing along with these brothers in Oakland, San Francisco, LA, San Diego. Not only about gangs, not only about violence, but also about immigration issues. Just as these gang injunctions are happening here, we have 1070 happening in Arizona, and it's basically the same thing, racial profiling. So I started moving and I started traveling to different communities and talking about gang injunctions and seeing what their community were going through. My journey took me to Sundance in Big Mountain this year. And while I was there, I sat down and I was sitting with a couple of youth from that area. And I started talking about the gang injunctions that were going on here in the Bay Area and down in Los Angeles. And I told them about significant little pieces of what this law does. The fact that you can't hang out at a certain time with your friends because you're considered to be a gang now. Or the type of clothes that you wear, the type of jewelry that you have. So when I was sharing this with these brothers from Big Mountain, they start telling me, well, you know what? Here at the res, they're going after us because of our jewelry also. And I said, wait, what? Can you explain that to me? And it was the same. I felt like I was back in Oakland again. That scared me because I know that, or I don't know too much about the political policies in the res, but I know that it's patrolled by their own people. So this tells me if this gang injunction is happening, something similar like this is happening over there, that means that this is a form of the police department to get funding. And so part of the work that we've been doing, we've been providing this area, this space where people can come in like me and ask questions, legal questions, because for sure I have no idea some of the lingo and the paperwork that I get back from the courts. So opening the space up in North Oakland created not only for myself, but for the youth and the elders to come together and come up with ideas to understand what was happening in our communities. How did it affect my community in Los Angeles? Over the weekend, the LAPD came and picked up close to 50 to 60 people in one roundup. My community was changed overnight. The people that were there were no longer there. Has the drugs went? Have they moved on? No, they're still there. Violence? There's still somewhat of violence in my community, but the fact that they moved away from there, they just moved them over to a different location. It didn't really help out with the violence, with the drug abuse. It's still there. It just moved it somewhere else. So I just wanted to speak a little bit about the work that has helped me to navigate through these obstacles. And not only that, but to also share with the young brothers here, but also to be that middle person for the younger ones and with the elders. I think it's very important that we have people like me and George and Manuel and our age to be bringing the elders close to the younger ones, because they need to be here. And we need to have that middleman or that middle woman to help us out. So thank you for having me here.
And I think it would be good to share thoughts and vision of how we can better reintegrate our young people's voices and have a more balanced discussion, more in the forefront, but a more balanced discussion of both our men and women's nation in future events and conferences. And if anybody would like to share, I think that it'd be good to move that conversation forward.
My name is Cecilia Guidos. I am a founding member of the Mission Area Cultural Center. I was 18 and a half when I started organizing here in the mission. I, like many young people then, didn't foresee the power of brainwashing that takes place in the empire. We live in the empire, and everything we do has to do with how the empire works. So it's been 38 years. I'm still working. I'm still organizing. I am still strong because I had spirit within me. And even the Catholics have it. If God be with me, what can be against me? So the brother said it a little while ago, that if we have spirit, you have no fear. So the first thing you have to do is to get your spirit together, because that's what's going to hold you together. 38 years and counting. We've been at this since 1492. One of the things that has happened is that they have twisted around many words that we normally use to heal, to cause craziness within our minds. So one of the things that happened for us, I just found this out, by the way, that the death squads in Guatemala are called caibiles. Well, guess what? The only Mayan king that the Spaniards never conquered, never took prisoner, his name is Caibil Balam. And they took his name, and they named the death squads after him. How dare they? So these are the kind of things that you young people need to know, that we need to tell, continue to tell, because in the least of things that you have around you, you will be able to see your ancestors without you really realizing that they're right next to you or they are within you. So things like, we started El Salvador. I was born in El Salvador. My nanas are all indigenous, but some of my tatas are not. So the El Salvadoran government decided to tell the United Nations that there were no Indians in El Salvador about 10 years ago or so. Well, changing that to show that there were still people speaking Nahuatl, that there were still people who call their cats Mixtu, which means cat in Nahuatl. And growing up, singing songs that we didn't know what they meant, but we knew the words. We knew how to sing them, but we didn't know what they meant because we didn't know now what. But it was so funny because last year, the town where I am from, they are called brujos, and it's called Izalco. And the only reason why the Spaniards called them brujos is because they were a town of healers. And in order for the Spaniards to turn things around, once again, it's called tergiversación in Spanish, to twist the verse around. They said the Indian people in that town, they're all brujos, they're all sorcerers. So there's a big joke about how people in that town are sorcerers. And the mayor of the town last year is now an Indian person. So we now get to hear about our healing ceremonies, about our language. But you know, the one thing that happened was that it took someone from here, from this country, to go back to El Salvador, to show our young people back home what Indian pride was about. Because we took 30 Azteca dancers in 2006 to, for the commemoration of that big massacre that happened in 1932 of this Indian people, 30,000 in 1 month. And when we took these young people who you saw today, the Aztec dancers, we took specifically young dancers to go to El Salvador, to go to that town, so that the young people in that town, we see other young people being proud of being Indian. And it was just feathers, it was just a drum, but that created a movement within the town to elect an Indian person, an indigenous person, to be the mayor of that town. I wanted to address you because I was a young person then. Drugs, you know, we have to act locally but think globally, because under the empire, we are all slaves. So we are slaves in many, many ways. And so thinking about the empire for what it is, seeing how these Europeans came from there to here to do the same things that they had been doing in their country. I mean, they finished their forests, so they had to come here to finish ours. You know, when you barbecue, guess what? You're messing up with the rainforest. You know, and the countries that barbecue the most, the United States and Australia. Now, do we know that? How we take our own people's forests in the rainforest. In El Salvador, only 1% is left of the forest. So I wanted to address you because it's been 38 years that I've been organizing. As a female, it's been really hard because, yes, I've had a very bad husband. And so that meant picking up the pieces in my household to care for 4 children and now my 2 grandchildren. So having a good husband, having a good son is also good for the women. And it's good for our society. You know, when we have, I mean, alcoholism is huge. We need to address that. We need to address many, many things that we keep thinking that they're just gonna take care of themselves. When we were 18 and 19, we had ethnic studies going on at San Francisco State. When we were there, we thought that by this time now, we would have ethnic studies in every school, from kindergarten on up. That's not true at all. It never happened. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this circle. We would be having a whole city come down with this circle. But because, you know, ethnic studies is so dangerous, and that's why your group is dangerous to the police. You know, if the police find out that you guys are doing sweat lodges and learning about yourselves, you're going to land in jail. So be prepared for that. You know, how to educate yourselves, educate your children, because out of the people in my generation who started the Mission Cultural Center, there were only 2 women who actually did any work there, and it was me, because I knew how to type and I knew how to take notes. So I wound up being like the secretary. So those are the traditional roles of women in there. And but out of a collective of 32 people, 30 were men. So you still have the upper hand, you know, by being men. The fact is that the women, we are still out here taking care of the children while our husbands are either dead, incarcerated, or enslaved by drugs or by the imperialist things that, yeah, mesmerism of imperialism. Yeah.
What does Bob Marley say?
My name's Morningstar Gali. I was honored to be on a panel yesterday with Yvonne Swan here next to me, Madonna Thunderhawk, and a number of women. We had a women's panel if you missed it. And I know that it's available online through Govinda's website. And I was reminded today that, you know, when we have these women's panels, when we have these youth panels, they're not issues to be separated. You know, these aren't just women's issues. These aren't just youth issues, that these are genocide issues, and that we really need to come together as a community to discuss what our responses are. And so I would just like to bring the conversation back to that. And one of the things that was brought up yesterday between Yvonne and Anne Begay and a number of the women was the targeting of their families and of their children in the 1970s. And they were targeted by infiltrators, they were targeted by the government, by the FBI, by the CIA. And so they knew at the time that they weren't safe and that they couldn't call on the police to protect them when their children were approached and when they were in different situations and moments of fear in that. And so we have to remember that within our own communities, when we have community members that, you know, work alongside us, that sit here in these circles. And, you know, that's, for a lot of people, that's their response, you know, when they're approached, you know, or don't feel safe within their homes, is that they do call the police. And so that's what brings up, you know, these issues of the gang injunctions. And so I just want to kind of open that up for the youth and the rest of the community members here to say, you know, I think it's really important to have that dialogue about fear within our communities, about the youth in our communities, so that we're not in the state of fear where we feel like we don't have any other options but to call on the police.
I really want to thank you for that comment, because I think at the root of solving all these problems for our communities and for the world, which I think we're being asked by the universe to lead solving the problems of the world, even though we didn't create them. And at the root of all of that is exactly what you said, fear. It's, if you look back at our indigenous customs of many people in the room, not just particular tribes, but many indigenous tribes, there was a sacred balance between masculine and feminine within a woman, within a man, with our relationships to one another. And a lot of the work that I know that George and Jerry Teo and Maggie are doing is helping to reestablish those customs of balance, respect, partnership amongst our people, whether it's young, whether it's elders, whether it's male, whether it's female. So I'm very sad Maggie wasn't here, but I know, like you said, I know she was invited. One of the things that I see that I find really heartening is that George and I and a bunch of other folks were in a Boys and Men of Color network that was convened by the California Endowment. And what I found really exciting there was that there were numerous men who have had enough of this spiritual work now to reclaim who they are. That there were a lot of men, especially young men, standing up in the room saying, women need to be part of the circle. We need to redefine masculinity, what it used to be for our people, not what the Europeans came and taught us masculinity was, because that's why we're violent. We need to relearn who we are. And that comes out of love. It doesn't come out of fear. It doesn't come out of fighting. It comes out of love. And I think that's the piece that I think is really challenging in our times. Our communities have been, I would say, really targeted, marginalized, oppressed in so many ways. And if we step back into our bigger selves, we can see that that comes from a lot of fear. And it's going to get worse. We're already seeing the things in Arizona and so many other places. And coming together out of love and responding to oppression with love, fierce love, is what's going to change this. And we're being called in this time to develop our inner spiritual selves and to go back to the teachings of our ancestors, to claim that space in the role in the world. And that's how we're going to solve this.
Thank you for that, because I agree. You mentioned two things that I think are key: love and the knowledge of our, not just knowledge, but the spirituality of our elders. And I think art is a great way to express that. It's a very intense way because it speaks to our emotion. We're in an age where science and technology has taken over, and we've almost become into computers. Everything's like time managed, and our time doesn't even belong to us. So I think if we're in a crisis and now there are a lot of people who are unemployed, that's a good thing, because now we have time. It's a time where we can gather together and reflect and see how we can get together what we want to say, and working with the talent of youth within the arts. Back in Puerto Rico, I was an actor. I like writing. I'm getting into film. So these are interests that I have. I'm based here in San Francisco now. So let's talk. Let's talk and see how we can do this, and how we can carry all these important messages through the best way we can.
So I'd actually like. I wanted to invite young people, or people who at least work, since we don't have that many youth, those who work with youth, if folks can kind of talk about some of the work that we're doing to begin to kind of heal our youth and, and develop that next generation of leadership, So, but please go ahead, Zoe. I know that as a mother, you've raised two really healthy children and who are now parents and really good examples in our community. So appreciate any words you have to share.
Thanks, George. This will be quick, I think. But I want to say I'm so happy that you all are here, George, Rancho, Ricky, and Red House, that you're here with us. And, I welcome you to our circle. You're part of our circle. I welcome you. And I think that sometimes, as people who are older, there are a lot of power imbalances in any community. And sometimes as people who are older, we throw our weight around in a way that makes young people maybe not feel so welcome. And I don't wish to do that. I want to welcome you. And I have a question for the youth here. I think sometimes when we're in an organization, we invite youth in and we want them to participate, but we want them to participate the way we do it. And so my question, and I think younger people have their ways that they're going to do things. Like, one example would be, I'm not on Facebook, but a lot of people are, a lot of younger people are. Maybe you have different ways of communicating information. So how can we support you in doing this work in the way you want to do it, in the way you think is the best way to do it?
You want me to answer them? Okay, so I guess I'll answer that one. How can we do that? I guess supporting any organization that works with youth, just to create a space where they can come in. I think one of the things that I've learned is that everything that's happened in the last few months regarding violence or gang violence, whatever you want to call it, it's after 3 o'clock. It's after they get out of school.
So they don't have anywhere to go. If they're not out on the street, they you know, the lack of spaces. I think one of the things that helped me out is that we had rec centers. We don't have rec centers anymore. We don't have after school programs. We don't have anything where the youth can actually go and fit in. The one thing that I have been, when I started searching for places to go, I did find spots like Eastside Arts Alliance out in Oakland, which created a spot where I can actually learn how to do a piece, a tagging piece, a mural, or do a recording. You know, providing outlets for the youth to instead of being out in the street, you know, give them spaces where they can actually be and fit in, and supporting them. You know.
Hi. I wanted to build on that also. I know earlier, I don't see the youth in here now. And just by the way, I know on my first trip to Africa, we were hosted by the People's Democratic Party of Guinea. And as we moved around in Africa, we found that youth is up to the age of 45 in Africa. So those of you that are in your 30s and getting a little nervous about it, don't worry about it. You got a little ways to go. Hopefully you have a long life. So up to 45, the youth wing, literally, the chairperson was in his 40s. And, you know, obviously, as you said earlier, that building that bridge to connect with the younger ones is important, but that does kind of fall on the youth to connect with the youth, as do the elders. But the youth that I had spoke with earlier while we were waiting in line, and I was trying to get my proper position in front of them since we said elders first, but they kind of beat me to the jump, was they were talking about doing a public access TV show that they have, and then they kind of took something back from that brilliant effort that they're making to say that, yeah, but you know, it's just a TV show kind of thing. And the thing that I injected, and I think that is important to this discussion, is the aspect of the content of what goes out. I mean, you can do what, if you're tagging, if you don't have it here, you're going to tag confusion. You know, if you have public access and you don't have spiritual and cultural access and awareness, you're going to put out more confusion just faster. The same with Facebook and any other means. So I think the value of knowing self and the value of the sacred circles and of unthanksgivings and of any other aspect of history is the fight that we have to wage. I have the privilege or the challenge sometimes to teach at San Jose State in the African American Studies Department. And it almost amazes me some of the basic things that enlightens youth that you think they really already had, they don't. So every chance we get, you know, I know in my early days in the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, of which I'm a part, we had a graffiti campaign, right? And we were all undergrad and we were a little overzealous, and we took markers and, man, we said, hey, we're gonna have a graffiti campaign. So if people are writing stupid stuff in the restrooms, we're gonna write, you know, all people of African descent are African and a part of the African nation and ready for revolution. And you know, if graffiti was gonna be used, we were gonna use it for consciousness. And some students rose up against us. Why are you writing on that chair? You know, and say, hey, what does it say? You know, and that works sometimes, but there was retaliation. But our zealousness and our spirit was out of love for our people and out of coming into this awareness that this fight that we have to use any means necessary, as Malcolm X was saying. And, you know, Kwame Ture was famous in saying, you know, you got to write it on your forehead and just wear it, wear your culture, wear that struggle everywhere you go, because the youth are not getting it. They are being bombarded. And as you know, living in capitalist America, there is contempt for people. There is contempt for people of color. There is contempt for our youth. We saw it with the Oscar Grant. We saw it, they just printed the article, Jimmy Lee Jackson from 1965, what's he going to get? The man's getting 6 months after 44 years of the officer of admitting that he killed one of the youth that were involved in demonstration. So, you know, they put this fear in the youth. They show the contempt for the people's struggle. And so we have to have that strength And the strength to me lies in knowing who we are and knowing our history and our culture.
So I know there's a lot of us who are planning to go to Sunrise gathering tomorrow at Alcatraz, and we're starting to lose folks. So maybe we could just have a few more comments, and then we can wrap up the circle, and then maybe just each of us. And if the comments could really be kind of focused on how we can really include young people's voices in this gathering next year, and begin to build that next generation of leadership. Pass that baton.
I'd just like to quickly say, as a mom of 3, that in a lot of these spaces and a lot of these conferences, many times that we're not able to attend because childcare is an issue of having our children there. And so maybe for the next conference, if we really want to include the voices of women, if we really want to include the voices of the young people, let's have some sort of childcare support at the conference. And so that would really, open the space for both mothers and young people to be able to attend and participate in the conference.
Well, the brother reminded me what our brother Bob Marley said when he said, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free your mind." So it's about taking down the walls, opening the doors, and getting rid of the borders too. Families, bands, tribes, communities. Hey, to the youth. I think that's a great idea about bringing childhood. We got the spoken word coming out. The spoken word, or as the kids say, word coming out. We got the arts. These walls are empty. We got the arts. We got music. We got dance. We got all of that. So your youth, excuse me. As an elder, most of my life's behind me. I'm 73. Most of your life's ahead of you. You're the youth. So let's cast that wide net, find that common thread, let life flourish, and say, don't panic, let's keep it organic. So hey, we got these walls. One more time around the sun. We got these walls. We got this space for the dance, the getting down, the hip-hop, bring it to positive hip-hop, bringing out that spirit. You got a whole tradition of Native spirit. There's Without Res. There's Culture of Rage. There's Native American punk rock, like Black Fire. Do you know Black Fire? So it's been happening. You got a history. Investigate your history and your hipstery. See what's happening. Bring it back here to the conference. One more time around the sun. You got a task to do. Let's not just talk about what you do. Let's take it. Today is the first day. What? The rest of your life. Childcare. I know you guys can get it together. If you got 3, we can have 15. Make sure it's a feast. Food for the body, mind, and spirit. We got walls. Let's get these artists here. We got the dance space. Let's get the dance space. We got the getting down in all kinds of ways. So what I want to say, the spoken word, or as the kids say, word. So let's do it. Right, starting right now. Hey, sister. What?
Give me some depths.
My name's Martin, and some of you know me, some of you don't. But I've been involved with DQ University, and I don't know how many people know about DQ in the room. Okay, that looks like less than half of us. And my point is, DQ came about 40 years ago, over 40 years ago. And before the occupation at Wounded Knee, there was an occupation at Alcatraz, and DQ. And it's a piece of land, 640 acres. It was a strategic air command base that Native people took back under the Fort Laramie Treaty, a Sioux Treaty in Fort Laramie. And that treaty enabled us, and I say us, so some of us were there, and some of us are there. And here we are, you're the cutting edge of the Native community, and most of us don't even know about DQ. And it shows you how the government is able to keep under wraps significant things. The most significant, to me in my life, it's the most significant thing that happened for us in our lifetime, in terms of reclaiming the land and then holding the government to the treaties. Treaties are supposed to be the most respected laws of the land, and and they become the most disrespected, as we know. And it's a war. And genocide, I'll say this to some people, they don't realize that genocide has never stopped. It's become just more covert. I grew up in Southern California in an empire called the Inland Empire, one of the biggest empires, in Turtle Island in terms of land mass. It's the biggest county in the world. It's a big, huge piece of ground. I grew up in the middle of, and I shared this the other day, the first day, that I grew up in the middle of millions of trees full of food, millions of pounds of food. And I grew up in an agricultural environment, and I learned about food. Without food, we're going to die. And if you think that as soon as they turn the electricity off, you know how many people are going to die? And you know how easy it is for them to do that? I was going down the 10 into Los Angeles, and I realized all they would have to do is cut off 5 major highways, and they could kill millions of us. Easily. Easily. Because there would be no food. There would no way to survive. And what we need is sustenance. We need permanent ways of living in the way that we did in the past. And how many of us could survive right now if the electricity went off in San Francisco? We would start dying like flies. And the war is on. I grew up down there, and they have there's all kinds of, it's a stronghold for the military complex. SAC Air Command, March Air Force, Norton Air Force Base, Camp Pendleton, all these military things I grew up around this agriculture too. And there is a war on, and I watched them, as soon as the Vietnam War was over, they went to that Desert Storm color. I mean immediately. And guess what? If you'll notice what color they're going to now. They're going from that Desert Storm color, and they're going back to that jungle camouflage color. You know why? Because they're going down south of the border to kill Indians. And this, what we're talking about, gang violence and all this kind of stuff, what it is they're just killing us. They're trying to kill us right now. I was at DQ. We had 50 students. It took us 5 years to get 50 brave enough students to be there, and they came in with 50 cops and arrested half of them. And I had to watch. It was like a massacre. It was a spiritual massacre. And no one even knows about it. Very few people know about this incident that happened over there. And it's a disgrace, and it's a shame that this happened and nothing came of it. Because DQU, these people were talking about, it's a place for the youth. It's a place for us to learn collectively. We had circles there just like this, and I was glad to see that stronghold, because we had a spot that we called a stronghold, and we got into a circle. Sometimes it was 5 of us, sometimes it was 20 of us, sometimes there was 1,000 of us there. And it's a perfect place to do that, and it's a perfect place to go back and do it again. And there's 3 people holding us back right now. 3 angry Native women are angry, and I was exiled myself for 1.5 years now, and they came and they arrested me. They tried to arrest me 3 different times. I was in handcuffs 3 different times, and all I was doing is trying to teach these kids to be strong. And we got around, and you wouldn't believe the information that we got in those groups, like this circle right here. And this is where the healing is. And education for us has to be from this age to death, from birth to death. That's the only way we're going to heal. That's the only way we're going to find that way back to our roots. I mean, at one time when a boy was 16, he was a man. That's education. We sweat twice a week for 6 years, and they came with guns and stopped us. They took our lodge down. When DQ first started, that first 7 years, there was no accreditation. And they were giving master's degrees. Why? Because it was so respected. Because what we have right here in this room, what we have is everything we need. We have everything. And we've allowed ourselves to be institutionalized and fragmented and not become whole people. And we need that. And there's a place to do that. And we should take it back again. We got 3 or 4 people keeping all of us out of there. And that's wrong, and it's so wrong, and it's a disgrace. We didn't know what to do at the beginning. We took the land, but I don't think we really knew how to get where we needed to be. At one time, I used to raise 4 million pounds of food with 40 men. I reduced that down to 5 men, and we were producing 1 million pounds of food. So it's totally doable. It's very simple. It's a matter of going back to the earth and learn how to grow things and grow food and live off the land and let the animals flourish again. Let the wildlife begin to live again.
All right, thank you. There's Brother Randy who's been waiting patiently, and then our sister here will get the last statement.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this is my second year volunteering as a cook here for the AIM West Conference. Thank you, Tony, for inviting me back, and I bring to the table all of my volunteers, all my cooks last year and this year. And like Martin said, right, Martin? You're from DQ? I've been here in San Francisco for 35 years, and maybe down the road, I know I'm the co-founder of Gay American Indians in San Francisco. We just celebrated our 35th year anniversary, and I know AIM had just celebrated their 40th year. Martin talked about DQ University takeover through the treaty. Well, at San Francisco State, that created School of Ethnic Studies, just celebrated their 40th year anniversary. And I went to San Francisco State, and it was an honor for me to be on the honorary host committee. But back to my food, I want to thank all the cooks. And a lot of it is their creation, their hands that make it happen. And I just want to say I'm hoping in the 40th year anniversary coming up soon of our organization that I started 35 moons ago, that we honor our Two-Spirit community, because you are in the home, the Bay Area home of the 9 counties of a very active, powerful, strong gay and lesbian community to address not only don't ask, don't tell down the road, but defense of marriage, and also the violence that's happening in the 4 corners against our transgender community. Our men and women, mainly from the Southwest, Gallup and Albuquerque, are being murdered. A year ago, we just lost, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we lost Fred Martinez. Beautiful documentary out. And I know that the transgender community in Phoenix, Albuquerque, and Los Angeles, and around the Indian country, we have 26 Two-Spirit support groups that I've been in contact with throughout the year. And I know our gay and lesbian Native community, American Indian, Two-Spirit people, have always been behind the scenes, behind the AIM banner, behind the AIM drum, marching to a different drummer at times, but I think we've been here all together, and I celebrate your 40th year anniversary, and I'm very proud to be a gay Native man. And I'm here to play host, like I told Clyde earlier, when I am affiliated or sponsoring a powwow or a community potluck, I put my best foot forward. And I know everybody in this room are here for a big day tomorrow at 4 in the morning to celebrate another year of what Bill Wapapa did. And I just want to remind you a little history that Bill Wapapa was the first AIMster back early on who spoke very proud. And he's the very first AIM man that spoke out at gay and lesbian rallies when Prop 5 was a big issue, the Briggs Initiative. He came out as an AIM man to speak against discrimination against our public school teachers. And that went down, as you well know, by the public vote. That was a long time ago. That was Harvey Milk's era, George Moscone era, but he used to come out alone and no drum, but come out with no AIM banner behind him. He stood his foot and stood his ground at Mission Dolores Park to be supporting gay and lesbian rights. And I'm proud of that history that Bill and you all will celebrate tomorrow at Alcatraz. And again, thank you, Tony, and thank you all you AIM men and women. And I just like to throw in this one thing. Next year, I think, she mentioned childcare. Thank you, Morningstar. But I wanted to say, I think we should have a workshop for all the AIM men on learning how to cook, okay? I'm gonna get this queen, excuse me, this queen is getting a little tired. But I could carry my pots and my pan and the teepee poles. But okay, I think you AIM men need to learn basic 101 cooking, okay? And I just want to say we've come a long way as a community. I'm proud to represent in many situations our gay and lesbian Native community in the Bay Area. but also our Native community, and many of them had a big dinner at the Friendship House, is happening. So I just want to say thank you, Martin, for all the work. We come in all four directions and many colors these days, and racially speaking and intertribally speaking. And so we're a mixed community, and I'm proud to say that I've always endorsed, mixed heritage people. And I want to say thank you for all of you people from Central and South America who's coming out of the woodwork to support your indigenous rights for people up north, including Canada. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kay, and I'm very upset, George. You don't know my name by now. We did all that work at SOMCAN, South of Market Organizing.
Sorry.
So, yeah, I wanted to say I'm not a newbie, and I'm not a stranger here. I mean, Randy, I know you from the late '80s, right? Back in Columbus 500 and the big AIDS conference town. I met Felipe at was that actually a wonderful event of young people when the Black Panther people from San Francisco, the Fred Hampton group, went to El Salvador and spent some time on a farm, and it was so beautiful. They had never seen farm animals. They'd never seen anything like that. They were inner city kids from Hunters Point. So it was really very magical, and I was plotting with you of how we could get JR to agree to learn some Spanish, because this monolingual thing is a real problem. But it's a hard place for black people because they're told they talk funny in the first place, so it's really hard. But I think the rules of this planet are diversity is healthy, and diversity includes age, it includes gender, male, female, two-spirit, and a few more. That's actually, if Pond Scum can do 13 genders, we can do more than the 3. I spend a lot of time, I'm around a lot of young people. Some of it's my taste. I like punk rock, and there's not too many senior groups that sit around listening to punk rock. But it keeps me in touch with the world that's coming, and what I can do back is, it was almost poetic here. It said, deprives me of keeping up with the changes and condemns you to reinvent the wheel. Okay, if I don't talk about my experience, what I learned, pass it on, then you have to do it over. And COINTELPRO is not a lot of fun to do over. And I was really happy with how many people came out of the woodwork when this stuff really started coming down and doing workshops on what COINTELPRO looks like, because we're full bore in it. We've got 10% of the people at a protest now are agents provocateurs. It's really getting boring because they all do the same stuff. But yeah, it's all the time. It's not, I have so much experience. When he gave me the excuses of why there weren't any women, I had them memorized from the Free Speech Movement Conference that did the same thing. It's the same lines that always come out. It's like you start from where you are, you look and you see there's no women, you look around and see if there's somehow you can fix it right now. Because, time is running so fast. It's not somebody else's fault, and it's not tomorrow. That's kind of it. I don't speak out a lot, but it would be kind of nice if people started acting like they recognize me once in a while. So my name is Kay. And I do speak Spanish, so I don't look like I speak Spanish. I was not raised Indian, but I'm part Alaskan Indian, so don't make too many presumptions. Thank you.
Actually, we gotta. I'm sorry, bro. We gotta wrap it up, bro. We have an elder that we asked to do the closing prayer.
I won't take too much time, my brother. I just gotta say a word or two. You'd be so kind and give me that space.
Everyone's gonna have a word.
Thank you.
All right, bro.
Thank you. I won't take long at all. I just wanna thank everybody for everything you guys did today. We came and we did it. But there's one thing real important, that we live in a little box. Sometimes it's called Chicano, sometimes it's called Indian, sometimes it's called Aztec, whatever. We live in a little box, and we can't seem to get out of that box. Well, guess what? All these boxes come together, and it means human, So the bottom line is human, human, human. So the bottom line is cosmic identity. So when we do finally really get back into learning our traditions and our ancient ways, we're going to find out that they weren't talking about Mexicans or Aztecs or Indians. They're talking about humans and human relationship to everything that surrounded them. You know? So I think, myself, I believe that what we need to teach our young people, once again, is to be human, is to learn that, you know, black, yellow, red, and white, it's nice. It's all different ways of looking at things. But in reality, we're humans. We're children of the sun, who gives light and warmth like a good father, and the earth, who gives good food and clothing like a good mother. Simple as that. So we're far from that right now. And one last thing I will say, the problems that we have as colored people, we cannot and will not fix it. We cannot and will not fix it. As hard as we try, look how long we've been trying. We can't fix it because we didn't make the problem. So it's going to take other people that are not colored people to understand that it's a human problem and we all work together. And I think if we do that, we're going to find the answer to this. So that's all I want to say. That I'm very proud of my Mexica ancestors, but I know that they were talking about human issues. And so our big serious problem is a human problem, so we need to take care of that. Trazo Kamati, I want to say that. Thank you very much.
So I want to thank everyone just for sharing their truth. We didn't really end up talking about youth too much. I just wanted to point that out. But what was very clear is that everybody had something in their heart they needed to express. And so, you know, we gathered, I think, in the last few days in panels and maybe we need to gather more in our traditional way in a circle because obviously people have a lot to say. And part of what we need to learn to do is respect the circle too. Because, you know, we need to honor that, you know, there was also other people who had things to say that, you know, because of the sake of time and because we asked this elder to do the prayer and she's late for somewhere she needs to go, we need to also honor that too and be able to respect each other and each other's voices. And sometimes it takes a little humility to be able to step back too, you know. So I want to thank each and every one of you for sharing what you needed to do in terms of your truth. And I want to ask our elder, Yvonne Swan, to close us with the prayer. And for any of those wearing headgear to please remove it. Thank you.
All of our family, our people, each one of our nations, be it red nation, the black nation, the
Just a couple of announcements. I asked George if he brought his drum. He want to bring his hand drum. I think we want to close with a song too. American Indian Movement. That is why we're here, to bring together our voices and our strength and our power. And I want to thank each and every one of you that have contributed your time and energy and your words here. Because without you, we wouldn't be who we are today and carrying on this struggle. Many people have died, have sacrificed so that we could be here today. And we have an obligation and a responsibility to continue to stand up, to continue to put aside our differences, continue to put aside our politics sometimes, and come together as a movement. I've been watching, I've heard almost every word that's been said through this conference, thanks to this internet. So I know that the message that each and every one of you put across is a very strong message. And I want to thank each and every one of you that came here. Randy, I remember Randy. My mom talks about Randy. Before I came here, I went to visit Daryl Standing Elk, who wanted to be here. I had to make a choice. Either go to the sweat or come here. But I chose to be here now. The last few days I've been late. But that's just because of my own circle and things that's my responsibilities that I'm trying to live up to in my life. And at some point in our life, we're going to be confronted with that, to make those choices. And the time that we have to step forward, we're going to be given that responsibility. And then how we're going to act and how we're going to carry it. And that's what the American Indian Movement was for and is for. It's a resistance. It's a struggle every day. I remember Bill Wapapaw's words many times. There is no plan. If you expect to wake up with a plan, it's not there. You're the plan. He says, rest, but don't quit. So many people sacrificed so we could be here and continue today. And that's what I hope that the words that we reach for are those same words. The spirit that I hear we talk about all the time. That is our guide. That is the plan. And all we have to do is find that and live up to it. To be human again. And that's what the struggle is about, to be human. We were going to watch a movie, and Tony's going to pass it out. So we have about 50 copies. It's called Reclaiming Our Voice. And I think it's a very important document, video, because I think as Indian people, as a voice, we're coming to a point in this struggle, in this time, that we need to make our voice stronger. And how do we do that? It's going to take each and every one of us, whatever work that we do, to come together and make that voice strong. Reclaiming our voice is about how do we get involved in independent politics or an independent party. I had lots of things I wanted to share and say, but I know that it will come a time when the time will be right. Because I know that there is a mission for each and every one of us in the American Indian movement. Those that believe, those that want to carry on the struggle, or you wouldn't be here. I want to thank Rose there for coming. Her father, strong man, American Indian movement, warrior, used to say, when you give up your time, you give up a part of your life. So when we come to these meetings, that's what we're doing. So when we come into these circles, let's come into the circle in a good, strong way, with a clear mind, clear vision, just like our ancestors, just like our teachers. That's what the American Indian Movement is about. When we went to begin to organize this conference, when Tony gave me the agenda and asked, I said, the youth, first, let's try to keep them in there. Yes, I want to thank George and him, keeping it. Yeah, we didn't know how it's going to end. And yes, maybe it ended in the end. Maybe for